So if you don't prefer to have your image visible, please feel free to turn your camera off at this stage. There will be plenty of time for questions at the end of this session, at the end of our speakers. If you do have questions and you want to put them in the chat, that's absolutely fine as well. We'll try to keep track of those and answer them at the end of the evening. We would love for people to introduce themselves in the chat so that we know who's here. And the other thing is that it would be great if people wanted to send by way of the chat messenger your email address to me so that we can gather up the people that are interested in this kaupapa and who have been here for this meeting tonight. So yeah, encourage everybody to send through your email address to me. So with that, I'm just going to get started, and I'm going to start screen sharing my own screen to talk about. So just check in. Can everyone see that screen okay? Oh boy. Thank you. So you should be looking at a picture right now of the proposed site. And I wanted to start off by situating us really clearly so we all know what we're talking about. The racecourse area has been now been designated as future residential housing. There are existing residential houses, including the only site access at the bottom right-hand side of the picture. So the air dispersion modeling shows that the racecourse area and the significant parts of the existing residential area will be affected by air emissions from this project. The actual site is zoned industrial with a specialized dairy area policy to protect the Fonterra complex from the direct and indirect effects of the use of that site. So if we move on from the site to the process, I'm using this slide just to give you a basic overview of how this type of waste to energy incinerator works. It's not an image that's specific to this plant. This kind of incinerator is called a moving grate incinerator, and you can see that there are an image of 3 moving grates down at the bottom. So basically waste is dumped into a hopper and fed onto these moving grates where it's burned at around 850 degrees. Most of the ash is generated at this stage, and the gaseous heat from the burn turns water to steam, and the steam turns turbines to generate electricity. The gas and particulate matter then passes through several pollution control devices, so they're marked as the scrubber and the bag house on this image, and before the gases are released into the atmosphere. So if we turn and look to, what this incinerator would do. First of all, this incinerator would burn 166,000 tons a year, equivalent to 456 tons a day of mixed solid waste, plastics, tires, and what's called flock, which is the material that's left over after the scrap metal process. In the Waipa district each year, there are about 22,000 tons of waste going to landfill. So this incinerator would turn Te Awamutu into a major importer of waste. The incinerator would generate about 23 tons of ash per day, and that's 21 tons of bottom ash and 2 tons of what's called fly ash, basically the stuff that's literally flying around. We often hear people say that incinerators are better than landfills, that they're a better option. But the reality is, as you can see from these 23 tons of ash, that you still need a landfill when you have an incinerator. But now the incinerator has turned what was just non-hazardous waste into highly toxic hazardous ash. And the fly ash is even more toxic than the bottom ash because the filters capture toxins and concentrate them in the fly ash. Now the company is actually proposing that this toxic waste product could be used for construction of low-grade concrete, thereby spreading their waste products around further. So what else would this incinerator do? Well, this incinerator would also operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and every day of the week. It would bring an additional approximately 200 vehicles, so about 368 vehicle movements into the community every single day. It would also use significant amounts of water. So the pollution control systems actually use water, and generate huge amounts of wastewater. So 200 kilograms an hour of ash treatment water would be sent to landfill, and 2.65 tons of general wastewater would be sent to the wastewater treatment plant. It is proposed to manage stormwater from the facility in a number of ways, including discharging into the Maniāpoto stream. So turning to the health and ecological effects, and you'll forgive me for kind of whipping through this quite quickly. The incinerator would release emissions, including mercury, dioxins and furans, particulate matter, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, acidic gases like sodium dioxide, sulfur dioxide, polychlorinated biphenyls, and brominated polyaromatic hydrocarbons, which are called PHAs. Direct exposure to these kinds of toxins is a real risk for the workers in such a facility, but also to the residents in the surrounding community, businesses in the surrounding community, as well as any animals in the surrounding community. They damage the human immune system and they cause cancer. Studies have shown direct links to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, increases in risks of miscarriages and preterm delivery of babies. There are links to reduced male fertility from proximity to incineration. Exposure to particulate matter impacts those with respiratory problems such as asthma, as well as people with cardiovascular issues, the elderly, and children in particular. In the Netherlands, research conducted around an incinerator indicated that the high dioxin output from the incinerator could be responsible for contamination of cow's milk and meat. And as a result, the production and sales of dairy products from the area was actually prohibited for several years. Interestingly enough, under New Zealand's air quality standards, it's actually illegal to burn even one single tire because the health and environmental effects are so toxic. Yet this project is proposing to burn 35,000 tons of tires a year. Burning tires emits cyanide, carbon monoxide, sulfur dioxide, and products of butadiene and styrene. And the smell of those tires burning will fill the community with an unbelievable stench. Aside from these emissions settling on the land and in waterways and the need to dispose of 8,000 tons of toxic ash per year, there will be significant disruption from noise, from dust, and from disruption of vehicle movements on the immediate community. And we also know that this subject is, that the site is subject to a flooding hazard. So turning over to the waste to energy part of this, some people say, let's look to Europe and Scandinavia, who lead the world in waste to energy. But Europe has actually begun to move away from incineration, and the reason is climate change. The 166,000 tons of material that would be burnt would be a major contributor of carbon dioxide emissions that would otherwise not exist. The facility won't burn a lot of compostable organic waste like food scraps, so it doesn't help to prevent emissions associated with landfilling these kinds of materials. According to an independent report commissioned as part of the proposal, the facility would have a carbon footprint many times greater than the same amount of waste being sent to a landfill, producing 65 kilotons of CO2 equivalent per annum, even after a range of offsets have been factored in. Burning rubbish is not renewable energy. Building waste to energy incinerators threatens New Zealand's goals to decarbonize our energy sector, which is already about 90% renewable. This incinerator would also need to use diesel fuels to start the incineration process and to top up the burn. Basically, most of the gas coming from an incinerator is carbon dioxide. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reports that each ton of waste that is burned produces up to 1.2 tons of carbon dioxide. And as I'm sure you all know, we're looking for ways to urgently reduce our climate change emissions. Waste to energy incinerators work in direct competition with this goal. There are so many reasons why we oppose this incinerator proposal. Many of its supporters will point to its supposed economic benefits for the community, including jobs. But the economic evaluation provided in this proposal does not take into account the likelihood of a change of the cost of waste disposal by incineration in the near future. Changes to the waste levy that took effect last year are likely to be extended to incineration when legislation is updated later in the year. Similarly, arguments about economic benefits and jobs must be compared with other opportunities for the community, Tonight, we'll hear from Sue Coutts and Rick Thorpe about the zero waste model that's about creating real community value and enterprise. We think the project is best summed up by the company itself, who actually included this incredible quote in their application to the Waipa District Council. They said, perhaps inevitably, the proposal may attract blunt criticism as greenwashing, cynically cloaking a refuse incinerator as a stepping stone to sustainability is a thinly disguised breakaway from the direction that New Zealand should be heading in. We literally could not have said it better ourselves. So thanks everybody for your attention. I'm going to stop my screen sharing for the moment, and I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Dale-Maree Morgan is a Ngati Raukawa ki Wharepūhunga, Ngati Maniāpoto, and the Kaitiaki of waste minimisation at Parawera Marae. Kia ora, Dale, and thank you very much for being here. I'm just going to once again do a screen share. I'll just bring this over. Cool. Over to you, Dale.
Awesome. Tēnā koe vau I tō tautoko ia hau, me o whakamārama o te pōnei. I te tuatahi e mihi ana ki tō tātou kingi, pō tātou te whero te tuawhitu, me te kāhui āriki, rire hau, pai mā rire. Ko te mana whenua, Ngāti Apakura, ko tō koutou whenua I te kōrero nei, tēnā koutou. Ki oku tuakana, oku whanaunga, ko ngā iwi tōpu o Waipa, tēnā koutou. Ko ngā kai whakahaere o te pō, Zero Waste Network Aotearoa, Go Eco, Parakore, e mihi ana. Ko ngā maunga whakahi, ngā aua whakatere, e raurangatira mā, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Dale-Maree Morgan ahau, no ngā whānau tākarei pōihi mōkena hoki. Tonight in this hui, I'll be speaking from my own whakaaro, not as a delegated iwi rep. I come tonight with my own opinion as the Kaitiaki at my marae to reduce and minimise waste. However, I do stand with my whanaunga, Ngāti Kauwhata, Rangitāne, in their current opposition to the proposed plant for Feilding. Thanks Jackie, Val and crew for making contact about this kaupapa and making me aware of this happening in Waipa. If we can move to slide 2, please, Ehua. I thought to start by building a tree of how this could look. From the rangahau I did on this project and what I've read over the years, hearing about burn to waste concepts. I sort of had red flags straight away. So when I looked into the groups proposing the plant, I looked a little deeper into their websites, looking for their organisation values and principles. One thing that struck me was within the 3 listed groups on their individual sites, there is no mention of the Treaty of Waitangi. That's always a litmus test for me, and I use when working with any organisation. That's usually a good indicator, which has a direct connection to basic principles of the taiao embedded in the treaty. So in Terra Consultants application, consent application, page 76, but 139 of the full document, it states quite a bit in there, of course, and it states the proposal generates many positive effects. It provides employment for local Māori, helps reassert mana whenua, and will catalyse significant direct and indirect monetised value for the local and regional economies. One common theme I found alarming by Terra is their use and definition of kupu Māori within their application. Kaitiakitanga and the reasserting of mana whenua status for local Māori. My own belief is that that is only achieved when mana whenua are given the opportunity to lead their own concepts, which are usually taiao aligned as opposed to putia aligned. And why I say it sort of like that is I was just part of a hui this week where, it was kind of made known that there were presentations that were had that were kind of led to believe that there was some real endorsement behind this, but not an actual effect. Not to the full effect that we understand they are. So it goes through quite a bit, and it also mentions about weaning off of fossil fuels. And it's really good that we had such a great lead-in by Val telling us about how much fossil fuels will actually be offset by this plant with the increased traffic volumes. And not only that, the endorsement of this is just the continuation of extraction. So we will, if we have these types of things, we'll start to, we will continue to just go same old, and keep polluting. This we know with climate change is having disastrous effects, and we as Aotearoa will not make any realistic changes supporting these types of plants. So it then goes on further on down that page, and Val, if you can move to slide 3 for me. It briefly talks about impacts on the Maniāpoto stream in terms of the proposed discharge of stormwater, and the disposition of clean fill within its floodplain will also be less than minor. So it was really good to hear from Val, you know, the real kind of effects that will happen to the plain. And if you just take a quick look at that slide, I'm not sure, but Fonterra actually already has a 35-year permit to discharge from those ponds, which ends up in the Maniāpoto. And if anyone's gone over the bridge there at Paterangi Road, you'll see that the river is actually white. And that is a direct effect, I believe, from the Fonterra discharging. So I think the incineration plant is proposing to, you know, to do the same type of discharge, and will have the same detrimental effect on our awa. So Val, if we can go to slide 4, further down in that page, in that application, it says the positive impacts of the proposal outshine residual negatives, and a compelling justification for the conclusion that this proposal will assist in the sustainable management of natural and physical resources. I beg to differ with the proposed discharge to end up in the Maniāpoto. These aren't really sustainable practices if the awa is already under strain with the current Fonterra permit discharge. And Val, if we can go to slide 5, that was, you know, as we saw from Val, quite detailed in how it would be offset. And I'm kind of sort of one of those persons that if I'm going to poo-poo an idea, I try and come back with a solution, you know, with my poo-pooing. So, you know, I will revert to zero waste and look at our bling out at Raglan at Whaingaroa there, and see that, you know, we can do other ways that will be far better than what is being proposed. So as we move down in that application, and as I said before, I can't see where mana whenua are able to lead their own concepts and whakaaro that would be really living the treaty. And it sort of says in the application that the proposal will otherwise not affect any matters of national importance or other matters, or will offend the principles of the treaty. I think it actually just doesn't do anything for the effect of living the treaty, and that's something I think that we might say to Waipa, how as we move through the slides, and if we can go to the next one, please, Val. You know, we have our bling over the divvy, and most of all, we know that we need to move to bigger models. So Val, if we can move to the next slide. I really picked up as well from that picture that we've got so many educational facilities of rangatahi, of whānau around that vicinity as well that will be impacted. And if we can go to the next slide, please, Val. It's something I will definitely bring up because we are currently engaging with Waipa District Council on the spatial design planning. And that's somewhere where we're supposed to be in partnership around weaving together looking at better ways of sustainability within these spatial design plans. So I just don't think that this plant actually weaves together. And kaitiakitanga for me is something that is exercised from within, that is led from within and not brought in from somewhere else. So yeah, if we can go to the next slide, please, Val. I'm going to wind up my kōrero. This graphic here was shared this morning from someone I really respect, because I know that his information is always on. And you'll see on the right-hand side of that graphic is New Zealand, and we're next to Russia. Val, if we can go to the next slide. This is what one of our rangatira said today. So in regards to that plant, that will continue to pollute, it will continue to support the extraction of oil and gas, that supports the amount of rubbish that we have. We've already used up our natural resources yesterday. So we're now, as he says, we're stealing from the resources of our future generations. So consuming much less and regenerating much more is how we ensure there is a livable future for our mokopuna. And it is that simple. So I'll leave it there on words of a wise rangatira. And I think there's one more slide. Thanks, Val. I just want to thank again the networks that brought this kaupapa to our attention more. There is a lot of people I've told in the last few weeks that are really interested about this, and I think there should be much more discussion about this in our communities of Waipa. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou I tēnei pō. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Dale. Thank you so much for your kōrero, and I think it's really interesting that you bring up the issue of oil and gas. Of course, the plastics industry would like nothing more than to say, oh, look, it's okay to use heaps and heaps of plastic because we can burn it to make energy. So we need to think about these incinerators as really being nothing, little more actually than giant fossil fuel plants, because they're feeding through all of this plastic waste really to burn energy or to create energy. They're really just about burning fossil fuels. So yeah, thank you very much for that really important kōrero, particularly about the mangapiko as well, and about the health of that awa. So I want to turn over, we're going to have a little bit of a tag team. I think Sue Coutts and Rick Thorpe, the two zero waste gurus from Aotearoa. Sue Coutts has been doing zero waste. Sue and Rick have been doing zero waste really for about 20 years, both of them. Sue at Wanaka Wastebusters, Rick at Xtreme Zero Waste. And so we have so much amazing expertise about other ways that we can deal with stuff that's at the bottom of the pipeline. So I want to turn over to them. I'm not sure quite how you two want to do this, but over to you to take the lead.
Kia ora koutou. I'm just wondering, I'm going to share a screen. Can you see the one that I'm sharing now? Hang on a sec. There we go. Okay, it should be showing up now.
Yeah, that's working
okay.
through.
Awesome. Yeah, I just can't see it myself. So, okay, so Rick and I are going to do a bit of a tag team. And like everyone said, there's been a lot of talk around New Zealand and around the world actually about whether waste to energy is better than landfill or landfill is better than waste to energy. And what we've noticed is that there's been a huge amount of energy and effort and money and resources put into having this discussion, which is actually a bit of a waste of time as far as we're concerned, because what you're really talking about is, you're focusing on the wrong question. You're focusing on the story of basically waste disposal. they're both disposal strategies. They're both strategies which end up destroying the resources, destroying the embodied energy so that you can't use them anymore. And our whole economy and our whole society has been built on this type of model where we've had this linear process where we take, make, and waste. And the real problem with having this discussion is that we're not looking at all of the other options that we have. If you look at this waste hierarchy, this is our glorious model of the potential things that we could consider. And you can see that by thinking about energy from waste or landfill, we're really just locked into that little tiny bottom section. We want to start talking about what the circular economy might look like and how we might be able to get involved in that. And to begin with, it seems like a bit of a scary conversation because we've been doing things the same old way for so long that we really have got used to that idea that, we're going to use a lot of energy to extract not only energy, but also raw materials from our earth and drag them into the economy. And then we're going to make all this stuff and then we're going to consume it. And it's sort of become a frenzy and a very, fast fashion just gets faster and faster and we just consume more and more. And a lot of very useful and good materials and products are going straight into either landfill or incineration. And as Val said, one of the ways that people justify making a lot of objects is to say, it's all good, we can carry on making all these plastics and we're just going to burn them at the end and it's all going to work out sweet. They'll be gone. You won't have to worry about it anymore. But the problem with, we've also got this kind of magical idea of the circular economy. And when people first hear about it, they're sort of like, it just seems a bit hard. It seems a bit complicated. We don't really know how to get from what we know and what we feel comfortable with to what we really need to be able to do. So what we have to kind of hold in mind is that it's actually very, very simple. All we have to do is stop burning stuff and throwing it away. And then we'll be able to keep it in our economy and use it again and again and again. And that applies to organic material, which might go back around into the soil and grow us another round of food and veggies or, some crops to harvest. Or it goes back into technical materials like things like plastic can go back around. All sorts of different metals can go back around and they can just keep on making more and more stuff. So the really simple answer to not needing to extract materials and not needing to landfill and incinerate is just to keep on recycling and composting and to keep, and that's in its simplest sense. But the real story is when we start to be able to extend the life of products. We're able to use our phone for, 2, 3, 4, 5, or people, that I know have them for 7 or 8 years. And so in their lifetime, they're actually keeping those materials and those products going around and around. So we don't need to pull things in from the environment to keep us going. Just going to click on, okay, so when we think about all of those products that we have that pass through our hands, all of them contain not only materials, but also embodied energy. And so the thing that there's a number of things that we need to do. We can design things better so that we can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that come from making and producing things. It can also design things to keep them in life longer. We can keep materials and products going around and around. And the really important thing is to regenerate those natural systems by composting and keeping materials going back through. When we think about the proposals that are being put on the table, one of the big things that they tell us is that there's, it's going to create these jobs. And so in the proposals, you see it, they're saying, we're going to create 60 jobs in the local community. And we did a little bit of research and we found that the international research that's been done says from incineration, you're likely to get 1.8 jobs from about 10,000 tons of material flowing through a system. So if you look at the 366,000 ton of material that's going to go through that system, then it's probably going to be more like 30 jobs that are going to be created. So we're thinking that that's pretty much overstating the case. if you look at the model for, job creation, we think we have a pretty good one in the Zero Waste Network. And what these guys are saying is they're going to spend $200 million and they're going to create 60 jobs. And that just doesn't seem like a very good bang for buck for us. If you look at what it might cost to establish a super bling version of Xtreme Zero Waste, say, maybe looking at $5 million to get the land, get the buildings on, get all the gear and equipment to get it up and running. So you could get 40 sites like that for your 200 million if you had that burning a hole in your back pocket. And each of those sites would have probably 20 at least people working there, all sorts of roles, all sorts of opportunities, from leadership and management and right to, entry level, getting involved in the first day out of school. So there's a lot of opportunity there. If you had 40 of those sites with your 200 million, you'd have 800 jobs instead of 31. And we think that that's a much better way of investing money if we're looking for an opportunity. And if you're thinking about trying to generate energy, burning rubbish is a pretty poor way to do that. If you invest 200 million to generate an electricity through this plant, you're going to be, the proposal says they're going to make 15 megawatts of energy. And our friends in the Community Energy Network say that a megawatt of energy costs about $1 million renewable energy to get up and running. So for your 200 million, you could do a lot better than that. You could get your 15 meg from the first 15 million, and you've got something like 185 million to play with to get battery backup, so that we don't need to be dependent on coal systems. So we're really thinking that there's a lot better ways of blowing all this cash. There's a lot better ways that you can think of to invest that money to take us into a different sort of future. It seems intimidating to think that circular economy, it sounds hard, it sounds like kind of complicated, but when you look at what the Zero Waste Network members have been doing over the last 20 years, they've been working really hard at building and growing the circular economy. So it's not something which is going to come in the future, it's something that's already here with us. And when you think about the story of Aotearoa, it's something which has always been here. It's not like the circular economy was just invented last Thursday. It was here, 1,000 years ago. The circular economy was rolling along and working really well. So it's not something that we don't know how to do. It's something we just have to remember. If you look at Zero Waste Network now, people say, you tiny little people around the country, how much difference could you really make? Well, our 61 members, which include groups like Xtreme Zero Waste, we've got 1,200 employees around the country. So we've got 1,200 jobs going on already. We've got, we're diverting 32,000 tonne of material from landfill every year. And last year we turned over $73 million. And so that puts us right up there with some of the, the bigger 0.5% of businesses in the country when you take us in the aggregate. And what I think it shows is that when you all work together, community by community, you might run your own project, but you can benefit from that association through the network. And so I think our model's got a lot to offer, and I'm going to hand over to Mātua Rick to talk a bit about Xtreme Zero Waste, which is an example of this, bring that, how this is brought to life in the Waikato.
Kia ora koutou, kia ora Sue, Val and Dale, amazing presentations, and yeah, I'd just like to continue to add to your stories. We very much like Te Awamutu, 20 years ago when Whaingaroa and our landfill closed, and as a community we felt a responsibility that we should do something about the waste that we were creating, and rather than just bury it in someone else's backyard, we should attempt to recycle and reuse as much as we possibly can. And really with the most simplest of solutions, or we call them handrolics, they're just very simple solutions. We've been able to divert 75 to 80% of our total solid waste. This is not using any particular technology, just simple systems, and everyone participating from the household, the business, all the way through. And so, yeah, when we aggregate these reusables, recyclables, it really makes a massive impact. And so what we used to bury in the ground, what we used to send to landfill as a community, now employs 46 people. We, as I say, are diverting about 75%, let's say, from landfill. And we are putting about $1.5 million back into our community through wages, contracts, and spending through local businesses. So it's a significant amount of money. For every dollar that we get from the ratepayers for the services of doing our collections, running the transfer station, education in the schools, for every dollar we get, we spend $2 locally in the local economy. So not only do you get the services, but you also get that local expenditure. So it's a great deal. And I'd love to tell you the stories about the most beautiful staff that we've had through there. 450 odd people who have come through Xtreme Zero Waste, part of their journey on to so many greater things. And so they spend a bit of time with us. And that's where the real treasure is those people and what they have done for Xtreme Zero Waste in their community, for the environment, but also what we've been able to help them on their journey through life. The resources which they're saying, is in this municipal waste, they're treating it as a problem, but we've not really encountered that. That's not been the truth for our community. As I say, 75 to 80% of what comes into our community are actually really important resources. They're commodities which we can find simple markets for. There isn't a problem that we have to overcome here. We don't have to burn it to get rid of it. We're actually saying that we need to establish amazing, like Sue said, circular economies within the Aotearoa. All of those resources are important for us to be able to recirculate around. So if we continue to do the linear approach and bury them in the ground or burn them, then we just have to continue to remanufacture. And as Dale says, look at the graph. We're stealing from our children. We're stealing from our grandchildren. Those resources are so important that we reintroduce them back into the circular economy. So there's not a problem to overcome in terms of all of this waste. It's really important that we just continue to collect it and to treat it with respect. These are resources that we really, really need. So Whangaroa, yes, we started 20 odd years ago, and you're beginning your journey, but you've already made really important statements about where you want to be in the future through your waste minimisation plan. You've got amazing staff in the Waipa District Council who have been fighting hard for the opportunity to establish resource recovery centres. And as Sue says, that stacks up economically. You could have a whole network of resource recovery centres, small and large, all focusing on different parts of that resource. And it's most important that you support those staff, that you continue with your journey towards zero waste, and that you establish these centres. We'd love to host you all over in Whangaroa. If you haven't been, mai haere mai, come and have a look. We've got other celebrities here like Jackie Forbes and who've done amazing work in this area. So come and join us on the journey. Kia ora.
Awesome. Thank you both very much for that. Really appreciate that kōrero, and I'm sure that there'll be some questions afterwards, and hopefully some people, Rick, will take you up on that offer. And I think that that's a great lead in actually to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Ellieda Komene, and Ellieda is a member of Feilding Against Incineration. And the Feilding community is actually going through a very similar kind of situation that Te Awamutu is faced with. So there's a company down there that's come in that is seeking to build a pyrolysis incineration plant in their community, which would also result in Feilding becoming a net importer of waste into the community. So I'm going to turn over to Ellieda to talk a little bit about how the community has organized and what's happened with their campaign in the last 6 months. Thank you so much for being with us. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Val. Kia ora koutou, ko Ellieda Komene taku ingoa, no kirikiri roa ahau, ka noho ahau ki Parawera, no reira tēnā koutou katoa. As Val mentioned, I'm Ellieda Komene from Hamilton, but currently living in Palmerston North and working in Feilding. I'll just give you a brief overview of the steps we've taken as a local group on the ground to bring public awareness to the proposed plant in Feilding. Initially, the application flew under the radar publicly. There was a small article in the local newspaper, but nothing that was, trying to draw public awareness. So we were lucky enough to get wind of it through Zero Waste Network. And what they did was set up a Zoom meeting like we have tonight for interested people to find out more about the issue. And then our group really mobilized from there. So we had because of COVID, things have been a bit up and down. So there was a mixed mode of online or in-person meeting, and that was kind of getting 15 people that had indicated an interest in the initial Zoom meeting to get together and say, well, what are we going to do? Finding out who's who and, what strengths everyone brings. And then from there, we kind of mobilized, really. We set up a Facebook group, set up Google drives, emails, so then everybody can be informed about what's going on. We then decided that we should contact the district council and the regional council and let them know what's going on, that we're an interested party and we want to know more and we want them to be accountable to what's going on. So it was quite positive. We were able to speak at both of the council meetings at district council and regional council. Unfortunately, it was all via Zoom because of COVID, so that kind of minimised our impact. But nevertheless, I think it was well received and kind of brought the issue to the forefront of councillors' minds. We also contacted local iwi, to find out what's going on. Are they supportive? Are they not? So that was really important part of the process as well. And then with the support of Zero Waste Network, they've got a national campaign, Regeneration Against Incineration. So we kind of came under that umbrella, and Zero Waste Network have been supporting us through the process and continue to do so. So that's been a real help with kind of navigating this tricky space around what do you do, who do you talk to, where do you go. So they've been awesome. We did a local government official information act request to both councils to find out any information that we need to be aware of. So any emails or applications or just anything really that we thought might be helpful in finding out more about the topic. And we also set up a Action Station online petition, and that's an Action Station were really awesome at supporting us and telling us drafting and checking the wording of the petition and and just really helping us through the process. As a person who's never done a petition before, they were awesome and have been really proactive as well. They've got a massive database of people that have signed up for previous petitions, so they were able to put us in touch with people within the area, and so we were able to contact people in the Maniāpoto and say, hey, look, this is what's going on, did you know about it? If not, here's some more information, have a read of our petition. So that was a really strong network that we were able to use with regards to reach, because reaching, you've got a mixed mode of with our demographics and Feilding, you've got to be reaching people via social media, but as well as in person, face to face, on the ground, so we did mail drops and things like that. So it's a lot of work with regards to trying to get that reach as far as possible. but both modes have benefits. So I wouldn't say just go for a full social media, Facebook type of engagement, because you'll miss a lot of people as well. So that's just something that we kind of learned in the process. We developed a fact sheet, so it kind of gave an overview of the proposal, what it means, and then that was kind of something we could give out to people when they asked questions, or we had a set up at a stall in the local farmers market, so people could come along and ask questions, and then, you know, at least we had something for them to go away and read about and digest, because it's a lot of information. It's new technology, it's new information, and as I mentioned earlier, no pyrolysis plant is the same. So the one that's being proposed in Feilding is different to the one in Te Awamutu. So you're not comparing apples with apples. So yeah, there's a lot of detail in there. We also did a bit of a protest at the regional council over a lunchtime period. So I think 12 to 1, there was only a small few, but nevertheless, I think it had an impact. People knew we were there, and it was kind of around that busy lunchtime period. So, you know, council staff were coming and going, and it was quite a popular street. So that was, yeah, that worked to our favour. But obviously with COVID again, there wasn't as much foot traffic or vehicle traffic as there probably would have been prior to. Another big help for us was having contact with the local media. We were really lucky in having some interested journalists supporting us, and, you know, if we sent them anything, they were publishing it, or you know, asking questions, and they've come to anything that we've done, or if we've said, oh, we've got this petition going live, they published that. They were at the protest. So the media is a big help, was a big help for us. That was Stuff, RNZ, and then also the local newspapers. We also did a lot of communication direct with councillors. So councillors' email addresses are all live, so you can find them on the website and you can email them directly. So applying a bit of pressure there is always good, you know, and from different people as well, not just the same people. It's really good it brings it to the front of councillors' minds and thinking, oh, it's not one person, you know, it just creates a bit of a swirl. So we found that to be quite positive. We also held a public meeting, and it was a chance for anybody to find out about this particular proposal and what's going on, what it means for the health and the environment, and it gave an opportunity for people to ask questions, which was great, because again, it's all new and quite tricky. So that was quite a positive step. And then that also, with our public meeting, the applicant actually then held their own public meeting. So it was quite good to kind of see what they're saying, and how they're portraying their application. And then it kind of gave a point of difference between both of the public meetings. Then we also we called it like a online submission writing workshop. So because not everybody's made a submission to council before, so we initially petitioned councillors to obviously decline the application, but if they weren't going to decline it, then they were going to need to publicly notify it, which then gives the opportunity for the public to find out more about the application and make a submission on that. So once we managed to get a publicly notified decision, which was positive for us. So we held a submission writing workshop, and that just kind of talked people through the process, you know, how the submission process works, and you know, you could use a template, or, you know, you can write it in your own words, whether it's an email or a letter or whatever. So that was quite helpful, because it can be quite a daunting process. And then what else have we done? It's really been a really collaborative approach. It's just about people's local networks, and everybody brings strength and skills to the table. So we're a small group of 6 at the moment, but there's still people around the traps kind of supporting us when they can. Iwi have been awesome, and we've been working together with them, and it's just a real collaborative, everybody get involved approach. It is a long, and it has been a long process, and it will continue to be so, because currently we're now waiting for a hearings date, and that's where commissioners will hear submitters' applications in person, and then the commissioners will make a decision on the application. Should the application be approved by commissioners, then there's the option that we need to consider of, is this something that can be taken to the Environment Court? Lots of options and possibilities. So it's kind of one step at a time, but lots of work, and it's really just about socializing and bringing public awareness to what's going on, and building that momentum, and then maintaining that momentum, and keeping the issue live. The other thing to note is that this year is a local election year, so if now's not a good time to bring these sorts of issues to the forefront, then I don't know when is, but so we're still in amongst it all, but we've I think we've done really good as a group, and we'll continue to do so. That's about it from me. Kia ora.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellieda. That's such a great overview of all the great work that you all have done in the last 6 months. And as you say, it is going to be a long journey. I think the really important thing that the community has been pushing for in Feilding has been about public notification. And so I guess I just wanted to take the opportunity to kind of give everybody an overview of kind of where things are at with this proposal in Te Awamutu now. So there's 2 different resource consents that are happening at the same time. So there's a resource consent to the Waipa District Council, and this proposal is a land use resource consent, and it's a non-complying activity. So that's why it requires a resource consent. The company is arguing that it should be non-notified. So they're not even saying, so under the Resource Management Act, things can be publicly notified, they can be limited notification, or they can be non-notified. They're basically saying, the effects are so minor of burning 166,000 tons of rubbish every year that actually we're not even going to be bothered to notify the next door neighbors and give them the opportunity. So that's what's happening at the Waipa District Council, and it is a non-complying activity for a number of different reasons, and that has to do with the application itself, because it's a flood zone, and because there's part of the area is actually still zoned residential. So there's a number of different components about it that make it non-complying. So that's at the Waipa District Council level. At the same time, there's another resource consent that's happening at the Waikato District Council level. And that's the application for discharge to air, an application for discharge to stormwater to the water, and for using clean fill in a floodplain. So part of the project in Te Awamutu would actually be to use a vast amounts of clean fill to fill in this floodplain to build the area up, so that then they can put buildings on top of it and put the incinerator on top of it. So at the district council level, those are discretionary activities under the Resource Management Act. So at the Waipa District Council level, that's Waikato Regional Council, the Waipa District Council, the land use consent is a non-complying activity, which means the council can just simply say no. They can just simply say no. to this application because it doesn't fit in with their plan. At the regional council level, it is a discretionary activity. So the application for discharge to air, and that means that they may decline the activity or they may grant the consent with or without conditions. So I guess what I would say is that from our experiences with Feilding, it is really, really important that the community start making some noise about these consent applications being publicly notified. So unless the council is going to simply decline these applications outright, they just simply, they need to be publicly notified because the opportunity has to be there for the community to have a say about these things. So that's, I just wanted to add that in as a little bit of information that the company in its application has been really clear that they don't think that the community should have any say whatsoever on these matters. And they're lobbying both of the councils to have non-notified consents. So yeah, someone has posted in our chat, there's a link to to both of the consent applications. So you can read the consent application. The Waipa District Council application is reasonably short. It's pretty easy to read. The Regional Council application, some of that is a duplication of the District Council, but there is quite a lot of additional information in there. And it is quite a long application. So I guess just bear that in mind. So I just want to open the floor at this stage for some questions to any of our speakers. And I note that early on in the chat that there was a question about the movement of vehicles. And I thought I'll kick off by answering that question. Someone asked, where did the 200 truck movements a day info come from? They have told me directly an additional 30 trucks per day, so 60 movements. So the 30 trucks a day or 60 movements is of the rubbish trucks, but they are saying in their application, they're saying very clearly that they are expecting another 100 trucks of different sorts along with the vehicles associated with people working at the facility. So they are estimating 368 additional vehicle movements per day at that facility. So that figure comes from their application. And there's quite a lot of detail in the application about the truck movements. Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm going to take the spotlight off of me so that I can see everybody. And I think there's a few questions in the chat, and I see that Summer, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, kia ora. With this proposed mahi, if it hasn't been publicly advertised, public awareness for this, so is it fair to say that the residents on Racecourse Road and that haven't been notified at all as well? Is that correct to say that as well?
Summer, that's a very good question, and I'm just wondering, obviously there's somebody who lives in the community who's heard something because they're on there. Ange Holt, Ange, you asked a question about the truck movements. Do you know anything further? I do not know the answer to that question about whether the community on Racecourse Road has been advised. So I'm wondering if anybody else on the call here knows anything more about that, whether people in the community have
Yeah, because I live not far from Racecourse Road, and I didn't know anything about it until my cousin Dale had said something about it and posted it up.
Yeah, Ange, did you want to talk to that?
Yeah, I can just add a little bit of info. So we are the house that's right on the corner. So we're part of, if they want to open up the road and stuff, they probably need to move our house. So anywho, in regard to that question, as a resident, I certainly haven't seen anything come through from council or from Global Solutions at this stage, notifying us of what's going on. Because of where we live, I have been fortunate and sat down with them, and they have shown me the plans and things like that. So personally, I know a little bit about it. And I do believe that there was quite a big article in the newspaper. I can't recall which paper, whether it was the Te Awamutu News or the Te Awamutu News. So there was quite a big article in there. It also came up at our community board meeting, and yeah, that comment that you made in regard to the consent process, that was something that I inquired about, and yeah, so at this point in time, depending on how it goes through council, will determine whether they choose to sign it off, make it a limited resource application, or put it out to the public. So that part's going to be a bit interesting, actually. So yeah, that's kind of what I know at this stage, if that helps.
Kia ora, Ange, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Are there other folks that have got questions that you want to ask? There were a couple of other questions in the chat, but I'm just wondering, are there people who would like to ask any questions particularly?
Yeah, I had some questions in the chat.
I don't know how to do that.
You want to go, Hazel?
Hi, tēnā rā koutou katoa, ko Hazel Wanda hau, no Ngati Raukawa. I'm also on the Ngati Raukawa or Waipa, and we heard about this project through our network at Ngati Raukawa, and I just want to acknowledge our zero waste community because you've answered a lot of questions that I never got answered. When I went to I have had a site visit. This company did meet with me on site, and there were a lot of questions unanswered. I still do have some unanswered questions, but it's only because of the information and the way that it's come across. Like your presentation actually has opened my eyes to a whole lot of issues and stuff, which I'm so grateful for. Yeah, I'd like to. I really need some guidance and a bit more information. I really appreciate Ellieda's presentation. I think that we Apakura can carry a conversation forward based on the information tonight. I think we will depend a lot upon the zero waste community, because for me it's a bit of a newbie. I'm a bit of a newbie in this space, although I had said down the other day that I lived in South Korea for a year, and I was privy to their waste, sustainable waste measurements that they do, but that was with kaumātua involvement right down to the cradle, or from the cradle to, yeah. And so I was looking to see if and how our younger ones were actually being taught these zero waste, and whether it's being taken through the schools and stuff. Yeah. So thank you. That was all I wanted to say. Nice to meet everybody. I'm enjoying this broadcast, this online.
Awesome. Thank you, Hazel. I really appreciate that. Gabrielle, you've got a question. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, kia ora, thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's really interesting to be here. I'm out in Whangaroa, Raglan, so I think I'm a bit spoilt because we've got Xtreme here in the backyard. And so, of course, this just naturally feels like really wrong that something like this might be happening. I just kind of, because I think we're just used to valuing our waste here. So I suppose I've just got questions, you know, I'd love to support some action of some sort, even though I don't live out there in that community. And I'm interested to know, I put that in the chat. I suppose I just go to like, what's the central government stance on this? Like, is this something that they support? Does it align with their climate action plans or their waste plans? And therefore, because I know that feeds down and influences the district council and the regional council. So yeah, I'm really curious to know a bit more about that.
Sue, I'm wondering, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I can do. I guess that the main problem that we have is we don't have any clarity from central government on where they stand on this. There are some sort of loose guidelines around that things people have to take into account when they're thinking about waste to energy or whether it's an appropriate thing to go ahead with. But at the moment, it's really not something that's been any kind of clear direction being given from central government. I would argue that any sort of, you know, waste to energy proposals are contrary to circular economy, and that's something that's been supported by the decisions that are being made in Europe by the EU. They're clearly saying that it's not aligned with sustainable development or any kind of circular economy policy. And I would hope that New Zealand will very soon catch up. We've had a bit of correspondence with government. Val's been, some of the Regeneration or Incineration campaign team have been in touch with David Parker, and we've asked him to have a think about what needs to happen. And we've also spoken with various people at the ministry, and in our submission on the waste strategy, we're very clear that we really want to see waste to energy incineration classified as a disposal technology, which the waste levy would apply to. And we've also been reasonably forthright about saying that we really need them to come out with some kind of policy statement. At the moment, everyone around the country has multiple applications, there's multiple communities fighting all these rearguard actions on the ground level, and a lot of councils are facing difficult decisions with very little support or guidance. And obviously we're in the midst of the RMA reforms, which may or may not give us a bit better structure to be able to address some of these issues. But I'd say that it's sort of like, in terms of direction of travel for central government, I'd say it's opposed to the direction of travel, but we're not getting any clear guidance, and we're seeing a lot of these proposals come to the table.
Kia ora, Sue, thanks for that. Did you want to ask anything else, Gabrielle?
No, I think that's good for now. It just sounds kind of a bit useless from central government, but I don't mean to be too critical.
Yeah, we would certainly like to see some greater guidance from central government, because there are a number of national issues of concern, particularly around the climate stuff, but also, as Sue said, the kind of general direction of travel that this is really not very helpful for. So I think there's a couple of Agnes, you've got your hands up. Before Agnes, before I ask you to speak, I just wanted to acknowledge what Hazel said. Hazel, it is fantastic to hear that that you want to carry this kaupapa forward, and we would really like to work with you and support you in doing that. So I just wanted to make that really clear, and I feel very encouraged hearing that. We are here to answer questions and to support the community, however it is that we can do that, and we would really like to work alongside mana whenua in doing that. So I'll turn over to Agnes. Agnes, what's your question, please?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my first question is, and I apologize for my ignorance, who are these people or big corp that are bringing in this idea of incineration to our country? Are they foreign, or are they from our land? That's the first question. The second question is that I've started reading the report of Ministry of Environment, Aotearoa 2022. And in this report, I haven't finished reading it. I've just started reading it. And it was such a very good report in comparison to the 2019, where it actually connected the well-being of people to the well-being of the environment. So I think my question is, how much do our local government or national government make use of this report in terms of their decision when it comes to the environmental impacts of this type of things that come into our country? You know, example is the incineration. Are this report useful enough? Because, you know, obviously there's funds being spent on this report. Are they actually being used by our own government?
Okay, thanks, Agnes. In answer to your first question, the proposers of the Te Awamutu are local. Yeah, so in answer to the second question, I don't have a very good answer. I know that there are some regional council staff on here. Valerie, I think you're on the call. Would you want to make any comments about that? Agnes's second question about the state of the environment report.
Sure. So kia ora koutou, I'm Valerie. I am the Waste Prevention Advisor at Waikato Regional Council. I do have to preface anything I say with as a staff of Waikato Regional Council, I don't represent the council's views. Only councillors can make that choice. So I can explain a little bit about the council processes and the consent application, and answer any other questions you have about council processes to the best of my ability. So first of all, I don't work in the consents team. I work in a different team. So I am learning as we go about this process as well. So basically, in terms of decision-making on consents, the consent application through the Resource Management Act process, you can only make a choice on a consent application for what the consent application has been lodged for. So for example, while there are wider concerns around climate and how we deal with waste and transitioning to a circular economy for our council, the consent application that's lodged with us is for discharge to air. So it's very difficult to bring in any other reports or bring any other influence that isn't going to directly relate to discharge to air. So I hope that clarifies things. Unfortunately, the consent process under the current Resource Management Act is quite limited in terms of what you can look at. You don't have the opportunity to look at a holistic view, especially when it comes to your point, Agnes, about wider well-being. So I hope that makes sense. And it will be the same for district council. They will be commenting on the consent application that's been lodged with them. So in the case of Waipa District Council, it is the land use. So there are some issues that some bigger issues that we need to look at, in my opinion, as council. So we have the opportunity to look at our regional policy statements and our regional plans and see how things like this, or more broadly, what decisions and what do we need to include in those plans to safeguard a circular economy future. And at the moment, most of those plans, including, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the Resource Management Act, are not set up to help make some of those decisions. So I hope that helps.
Kia ora, Valerie. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Before I ask Haupai Puke to ask a question, I just want to encourage everybody, if you haven't put your email address in the chat and you'd like to stay in touch about this kaupapa, please do put your email address over there so that I can follow up with everybody about this kaupapa and we can kind of carry some of this momentum forward. So, Haupai, kia ora. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Sorry. Okay. I can't take my hand away because I don't know how to. Kia ora, everyone. Just to respond to one of the questions asked, who are these people? I know them very well. Some of them are former students of mine, and we also belong to the same iwi. Waste disposal is their business. So it really is probably, I would say, an extension of what they're at the moment involved with as far as waste disposal is concerned. So we might talk about collecting rubbish of some form or bottles or whatever. If it's anything that has to be got rid of from the home, then that would be part of their waste disposal. So this in effect is an extension of that to put it on a bigger scale. I noted on one of the emails, and I'm not sure it's an email that everybody has seen, that Feilding Marae, which I am the trustee chairperson of, so I have a responsibility there, and I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody. But Feilding Marae had agreed to the proposal. It wasn't a total agreement, and I can put my hand up and say, well, I was one of those who disagreed. I disagreed because at the moment, Feilding Marae is engaged in the establishment of an ecological corridor between Maungatautari and Parawera Mountain via the Maniāpoto River. And as far as we're concerned, the Maniāpoto River is too close to the intended site of the waste disposal not to be influenced, whether it's above the ground or below the ground. And that's the reason for my own personal disagreement about it. However, the vote was taken at the marae and the majority of the members were in favour. So that is that. I believe that there are some that were not completely au fait with what the intentions were or how it was going to happen. My disagreement came from the fact that I spent some time in Europe and travelled throughout Vienna. And when I saw the state of the Danube, I was disgusted, because we always think of it as the blue Danube, so the water is clear. And to see the pollution that is within the rivers and alongside the rivers was just shocking for me, coming from New Zealand, anyhow, into Europe. So I thought about that and I thought, no way do we want to have a project with so much influence on the environment in our country, especially in our area of Waipa or Waikato. Hence my decision not to support it. But they are people that do have a connection locally. They're in the business of collecting rubbish and waste disposal, so they're not ignorant. But I think that some of the points that have been brought up tonight with regards to the environment are not foremost in their minds. That's just a personal comment I want to make. And I just want people to know that while a vote was taken at Feilding Marae, there were some abstentions and some people against. It wasn't a vote that was totally in favour. And now I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you so much for that background on the situation there. We really appreciate getting a better understanding of kind of what's been going on, and yeah, really welcome the opportunity to have a corridor with the marae at some point if that's appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think Rick's extended the invite for people to come to Whānauroa over to Xtreme Zero Waste. And the great thing is that is a living, breathing alternative model for people to see what else might be possible as well. But yeah, certainly what's shocking to me about this particular proposal is the scale of the proposal, the materials that are being proposed to be burnt. Like, this is really, really toxic stuff. And what's interesting is that in the resource consent application, they're very clear that they're getting a legal opinion so that to say that they're not a hazardous waste incinerator. Yeah, because a lot of the materials, once burnt, create some extremely hazardous emissions. And so, yeah, we have real concerns for the health and well-being of the community, quite aside from the zero waste waste issues. Like, this is a toxic nightmare for the community, for the whole of the region. So it is a really worrying prospect that this would be built in a floodplain. It just ticks all of the boxes for completely crazy project. So we're just about out of time for this evening. Thank you everybody for putting your details over in the chat. If there's anybody else who wants to add that, add your contact details to stay in touch, please feel free. I work for the Zero Waste Network. I'm the communications person, as well as coordinating this anti-incineration campaign. So you can find me through the Zero Waste Facebook page. We've also got our partner organization Parawera on the call tonight, Jackie Forbes and her team, and the wonderful folks from Go Eco, the Waikato Environment Center. So thank you everybody, Joe and her team, for your support in making this meeting happen tonight. We really like to thank Dale-Maree for doing the karakia. I'm going to ask Dale to close with the karakia for us, and to thank the Ngati Apakura whānau for being with us tonight to engage with us around this kaupapa, and for everybody from the community and from around Aotearoa who is concerned with this issue. So feel free to reach out to me or to anybody that's on the call about this if you want to talk more and discuss more about this. So I'll just close and say thank you very much for being with us tonight, and I'll hand back over to Dale to do a sakarakia whakamutunga. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Val. Yeah, and I support everything, all the mihi, and thank you guys for all your guys' organisation tonight. So I'll just start off. Unuhia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua i te ara takatā. Koe ara e rongo whakairia ake ki runga, kia tīna, hui e taiki. Kia ora koutou, hongari.
Kia ora.